Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you guys so much for joining. Well, I've been putting together this trust video for a long time, and what I typically do is I try to start formulating and putting things in order in my head before I begin to make a video, so I can think about what content and sort of, I don't really think of it as like I'm trying to pass on a teaching as much as I see it as sort of just sharing my journey of what I've discovered and what I've learned. And if it resonates with you, awesome. You might find yourself further along on this journey, or you might find yourself in the middle of it. Who knows? I've been on this trust journey now for, I don't know, since 2017. So it's been something I've been looking at for a while now, and I'm constantly testing it to see if it pans out or not. So as I began to really start to try to put this video together over the last few months, just thinking about it and the implications and all the connections it seems to have with so many different things. I mean, it seems to just spread throughout everything. That's why I haven't really been able to get this, because it's like it's been unpacking into something way bigger than I initially thought it would be. And it sort of led to this, I'm kind of hesitant to say a vision, but this picture I got in my mind, right, of what my job is here to do. And it's not, I already know it's not for everyone, but it may resonate with you, and you might feel like, hey, that sounds like something I'm supposed to do too. So I'm just going to share it, see where it goes. But it kind of led back to when I first made the channel, of course, and I kind of came to this understanding of how everyone seems to be pushed away by their worldviews and religions and cultures and all of that. And I was made really well aware of the division and began to try to come up with a way to mend that divide. And that's sort of where the channel came into play. The whole Unbiased and on the Fence. It was a place where people could come, hang out and everything. And matter of fact, I came across this clip from Kahn that I want to play a little clip of, because he really kind of summed up this whole idea that sort of where I was at with the Unbiased and on the Fence thing. I mean, you can take it at face value, but I saw it as really a deeper understanding. And so I thought he eloquently sort of explained my ideas that I had going through my head as I was creating the channel name and the idea for the content we would cover and everything. So let me jump over to Kahn here, and it's just like a couple minute clip. These links, I will have 2 different clips, and the links are both in the description box below.
So we all are representatives of the collective one I am, and individually we all are seeing it just a little bit differently, so that all perspectives and voices can be seen, valued, and heard in unity consciousness. So one awareness manifested means we're all seeing it differently, but we're all being fueled by the same source. Awakening is when you start to live as the source of your perspective and not just lost in the fantasy of your individual viewpoint. And the only reason why people call your individual viewpoint a fantasy is not to say that it's not real, but because when you're in your own individual viewpoint, have you ever noticed this? That when you're the most entrenched and when you're the most attached to your own individual viewpoint, when you are defending your viewpoint to someone who disagrees, when you're trying to get a partner to see your point of view, ooh, if they could just see my way, right? If they could just see my way, they'd be so much smarter. Isn't that the funniest, most subtle, egotistical thing we can think? If only they could think the way I think. And when we're the most entrenched in our individual perception, we have this subtle belief that there's no other truth but what we see. And that's what's meant by fantasy, is that you think the way you see it is right, but right is not just the way you see it. Right is the space where everyone has the right to see it uniquely. So in spirituality, we only call the individual viewpoint a fantasy? Because when you're so entrenched in the individual viewpoint, you tend to believe there's no other viewpoint that's equally as valid. And when you awaken out of the defending and the attachment to your viewpoint, and you open up to the equality of all viewpoints.
And there we have Matt Kahn, eloquently said. And I think that really ties into sort of my initial ideas of rising above those things that separate us and beginning to value even other people's opinion, and even taking it a step beyond what Matt was saying there. Not only just allowing someone to have their point of view, but taking it a step further and saying, what recipe would it take for me to think just like that person? Well, if I was born in this culture, if I was born in this religion instead, if I was raised by their parents, would I have turned out the same way? And I think more than likely you'll come to the conclusion that we're sort of a product of our life, our experiences, where we're born, what religions, what we're taught, our teachers and people that teach us along the way. You can really see how we're really just a product of our upbringing, and in many ways at least. And it's sort of kind of finding your journey out of all of that baggage that was attached to you as a child and really being able to make that connection with the divine. But everyone has their way of doing that, and that's sort of what I saw in this whole image. I almost saw, it was almost as if everyone was like a pixel in this mosaic of the overall picture of everything, and everyone's point of view, everyone's pixel was just as important to paint this picture. Whether they were sort of in it, dealing with darker things on their journey, or whether they were up, everyone's sort of in their own range. They fit into their own, everyone's journey is just as unique, and I think the more we can respect that, the more we can sort of bring down the walls that divide us. So that really, all of this trust has led to this vision that I got recently. And one of the most incredible things that's ever happened to me also was a result of this trust that I'm talking about. And I'll be making a video on that really soon. But I just had someone that was really sick come into my path, and I knew it was no accident, and I knew there was a reason. I just kept digging and digging and digging, and we were able to find a solution. It was great. It was like a team of us came in to help this guy. It was, I had Atsuko, had her do her Reiki. She's a master Reiki healer, so I had her do her Reiki healing to try to give him some immediate relief. And then he had come to me for a BQH, and he couldn't connect in with that. He was having difficulty with that. So Sherry and I talked with this guy for a long time one day, and I said, Sherry, why don't you try to have a BQH for this guy? And I know I put her on the spot, but she was amazing. She was able to do this BQH, go to this level where she actually remembered, anybody that knows Sherry, some of her sessions she doesn't remember, but this one she remembered. It was kind of fragmented or whatever, but she remembered that she had got this guy a solution to his sickness in her session. So the next day, before I had the recording, she's like, hey, did you send him the recording yet? I'd really like to look up those words and check that stuff out. So she was already doubting the information. It was so funny because I totally had faith in it the whole time. So we got on the internet together, started looking stuff up, and I got to tell you, what we found literally brought me to tears, because some of the exact wording from the session was in this product that we found that wasn't a regular. It was like this obscure. We'll have a whole video about it because it's going to be an amazing testimony. We'd like to see how this guy does with this stuff that he was recommended to try, and so that's going to be hopefully a really uplifting video that's on the way. It's in the making, and it's really got me flying high because I can really see how this trust that I've been playing in for a while now has really led to me knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that someone was put in my path for a reason, and to keep pushing through until people in the group came together and we were able to actually get some real world results. And they actually sent me an email and said we did more in one day than his family did in 12 years. And so it was a lot of touching moments, I really have this trust to think. And I think what it is when I came across Dolores Cannon, I heard the idea that we're in this sort of classroom idea, that we're here to learn a lesson and all that. And, I've always kind of started to reconsider how I thought of things and to consider, is this a classroom, And one of the, or a simulation, you can think of it as a simulation, like if you're going to be a jet fighter, you'll get into this machine that is a simulator. It's got screens on it and it moves and it makes you feel like you're really in a jet fighter. It's a simulator. So a lot of times we'll say game, and that kind of puts some people off because they deal with some very real pain and issues, and to call it a game is just not good enough. So I prefer to kind of stick with simulation, if you will. So if you imagine that we are in this classroom and we're here to learn something, then the first thing that sort of came to mind was to look back at my life. And I was sort of amazed to come to the realization that it appeared that my life was really random, at a glance, just sort of random, accidental, all chance. But when I really got back and I began to really take note of the synchronicities in my life and the different times that things lined up and the way I met people, even some of the hard times I went through and what I sort of gained from going through that, I could really see how this could all be set up to appear to be random and accidental and all by chance, but really just to provide this very real experience here. So once I considered that, it worked out. So then I thought, well, if I've been taken care of, and I've mentioned this before, if I've been taken care of my whole life up to this point, I have no reason to think I won't end up where I need to be, because I ended up where I am by accident, but I know it's where I need to be, if that makes sense. So I made it here out of pure ignorance, right? Even at times thinking I knew where I was going and had no idea where I was going. Now I'm here. I have no idea where I'm headed. I'm okay with that. I'm actually fine with that, because it's sort of like the highway at night when your headlights are hitting the highway. You only need to see just a little bit ahead of you. And once you sort of come into this trust that everything here is on purpose, there are no accidents, everything here is here to really teach you something, then you really begin to notice those things that stand out as being sort of out of the norm. Like, I don't know, somebody crosses your path, just really anything at all. You begin to look at it as a lesson or a catalyst or just something that's there on very much on purpose, no accidents. And it feels like once I realized that in 2017, I was really able to progress through the lessons that I needed to learn. And one of the reasons being is when you begin to have that kind of trust that everything's there for a reason, it's like it's automatic. It just moves you out of the victim mentality. Now all of a sudden you're the student. You're here. It's not a problem. It's an opportunity to learn more. So once I started playing in that for a while, I really began to understand how we're really protected. There's a level, there's a perspective where you can look and you can see that everything is working, good and bad, everything's working for the whole. And that's sort of this image I got, and sort of this message of me being what I was shown in this vision as a pillar, right? So what I was shown is all of these layers. You got all of these layers that look like just multiple levels. You can think of it as densities or dimensions or whatever. But at the lowest levels, it's really chaotic down here. A lot of fear, a lot of anger. And then as you move up and progress through the levels, you'll notice that things get calmer and more loving. And by the time you get to the top of this range, there is no fear or anger. Everything just is. And so I was shown how everyone's perspective is indeed valid. They're just plugged in at different points on this range, So are they playing down in here in the, what I was shown is how You'll hear about wars in heaven and aliens fighting up there, and we just can't see it, Well, that's this level, But there's a whole nother level where higher level beings aren't up there fighting. So it's not that people's perspective is wrong or the information is bad. It's just that they're plugged in at a certain point. I was even shown how people seem to plug in during BQH sessions along different ranges, and because I had one person that wasn't part of the community, and so they weren't really on this awakening journey. They were just curious, so I went out and did it, and I found that I was just we were exploring their consciousness. It was a journey of their consciousness. It was much like just kind of a random dream, and some of the information that came through just ended up not panning out, and it was shown to me that, people plug in at certain points, sort of by whatever they're resonating at, I guess, is where they'll plug in when they go to the BQH. So I guess that's good to know. If you're having a bad day and you have a BQH schedule, you might want to put it off, but we recommend that anyway. But so I was shown how this pillar will go through all of these different levels, all the way from the chaotic level all the way up. And these pillars are people that are able to sort of welcome everyone, not to put up that block, because it's so natural to want to gravitate to our own kind and to reject those that are not part of our group. So to be able to transcend that is really, taking up your cross daily sort of activity for a lot of people. It's really hard not to do that. I mean, most of us are hermiting up in our homes and just hanging out here on the computer, and as you saw with April's session, we got to start getting out there and shining our light, or whatever. But this sort of ties in with this whole idea of these pillars. These pillars transcend all of these different density levels, but they become anchors at any of the levels for any of the light workers working within those levels. So if you've got the people that's down here with the wars in heaven, angels and demons type activity going on, and they're doing their battles in the spiritual realm or whatever, they've got the anchor there, the pillar there that comes through their level they can anchor to. And, if we can get enough people there, we can pull these levels upward, because it's sort of the consciousness that's down, right? And it's sort of, as you're there as an anchor and you're not sort of stuck in one of the, because a lot of us were explorers, and I'll play this clip by James Mahu here in a second, and just because there's a really cool clip in here where he explains the difference in an explorer and an alchemist, and that is really getting at the heart of, because you're somewhere on that range. So, I'm a truth seeker, I'm an explorer, I like to do that, but at the same time, I'm an alchemist. So I'm trying to transmute negative energy to positive energy. So that's like another reason for these pillars that transcend all the levels and connect up through to the higher levels, not only with trust, but also with transmuting any energies as we go about our day, because we've still got to live. We can't just, stay in our basement and be that pillar. We have to still go out and interact. So for me anyway, this was shown to me that I'm sort of this hub or this pillar that's been shown to me before as far as a gathering place or a place for people to meet and unite. But now I'm being shown how it's also to shine the light and to transmute the energies and to be out there and in the world, but not of it, to help people to deal with their issues, but, as empathetic as possible, but not to allow myself to get pulled into the drama or the chaos of a situation. And there's a big difference, and I think it's important for the empaths to really see the difference in, being empathetic and seeing someone's side, and then allowing yourself to really get sucked into the drama. So there's an sort of an observation point of view with being empathetic and understanding someone's perspective and where they're at, and that's different than sort of jumping in the boat with them and really taking on all of that, what they're dealing with. So I think for me that's been a huge thing, is to make that distinction. So I just wanted to bring that out, because another very important point when we get out there and we're around other people, because dealing with other people, we're going to have to deal with other people's issues. So it helps not to get too pulled in. I want to go to this clip, link below if you'd like to hear the whole thing, but I just wanted you to hear the specific part about an explorer and an alchemist, and the difference between them.
But I would much rather be an alchemist than an explorer.
What do you mean by an alchemist?
If your human instrument is fear-based, locked in the rigidity of a left reptilian brain, you're more likely to broadcast fear and insecurity and depression, for example. These emotions are a form of energy, and like all energy, they are conserved. In a sense, energy is never created, it is transformed or recycled. I can take energy that is dense and closed, and I can transform it to an energy that is opening to the frequency of love. I can be an alchemist of energy, and instead of trying to turn iron into gold, I turn anger into kindness, or depression into interconnection, or indifference into compassion. Energy then informs matter. Energy is many things by human standards. It can be physical energy used to produce something like work or to play a sport. It can be emotional energy that deals with love or anger. It can be a mental energy that helps us solve a problem or capitalize on an opportunity. It can be a spiritual energy that activates and sustains our interest in the culture of soul. These different types of energies have different frequencies. Some are condensed energies that are heavy, in a sense. Some are light. We've all felt these different energetic fields in rooms or public spaces or nature, and we've all felt them within ourselves. Sometimes we're buoyant and joyful, and the energy, at least emotionally, is light and easy. Other times we're heavy with disappointment or fear or frustration. We feel these energies. They're not abstractions to us or words on paper. They have a visceral reality in our local universe. Being an alchemist is being able to transform energy, to shift energy, not to let densities build up and calcify, because these are the things that weigh us down and make our abilities to be alchemists for ourselves and others more difficult. Explorers, on the other hand, like to acquire information, knowledge, data, and of course experiences. This can be wonderful, so I'm not saying this is good or bad, merely that it's a different path. They are seekers. They seek knowledge so they can experience a state that's closer to truth, closer to wisdom. This world seems to hide truth so well. Many people feel it's vital that they put a lot of energy into this endeavor, otherwise truth will slip away from them. I refer to these seekers as explorers. However, behind this acquisition of knowledge gnaws the question, is this really why I came here? Is this why I incarnated? To acquire knowledge? Especially, as I mentioned before, when the knowledge is often contradictory or lacks any grounding in fact or proof. For some, the answer is yes. For many, though, the answer is that they came to be alchemists. They came to experience the transformation of energies. They incarnated to become receiver and a transmitter of these higher energies, and to go about this consciously, courageously, and most important, unconditionally, to their best ability in the moment. As you can imagine, these are not exclusive paths by any means. People can do both, and very often the seeker-explorer becomes primarily an alchemist in the latter part of their life. The explorer fills up all the various paths and ultimately realizes that they're all tributaries to the long path. And the real reason to be alive is to demonstrate the example of an alchemist. Again, it's all ratios. There's never a 100% one or the other.
Are there other stages or categories?
Not a big advocate of categorizing people, of course.
And I'll leave that there. I stopped it at 13322 if you would like to hear his other categories of people. Okay, so really interesting, but you know what it sort of put this picture in my mind, how this picture played out of these pillars that were sort of penetrating down through all of the various density levels, dimensions. What makes it accessible at the various levels is how accessible we are as receiving people, how unbiased and on the fence sort of is what I'm saying, how much, we just accept people as they are. And then what penetrates these pillars up through the upper levels is the trust. The trust that everything is as it should be. Everything is playing out in this well-orchestrated play. Everything's happening the way it should, indeed. But at the same time, we can do our part to take note of the thought streams, if you will. And this kind of gets back to the whole idea of like a devil on the shoulder and an angel on the shoulder. One of the things I've been talking about lately is sort of separating ourselves from our thoughts, realizing we're the observer of our thoughts. And then you can begin to make the distinction between, are you tapping into, and this is a really simple way of looking at it, you know, once you see this sort of classroom idea, you can see how what people tend to deem the matrix, the game, the simulation, the program, the AI, you know, that's running this whole system, however you want to view it, it doesn't really matter. What matters is it's designed to distract. It's designed to separate. It's designed to challenge, to be an adversary. This is the whole purpose of it. It's like any movie or any game that we've ever designed. We've always got the antagonist. We've always got the hero and the villain, right? So life is no different. And once you recognize this thing as a playground and you realize everyone's playing their part, then you really begin to expand into the beauty of it all without passing judgment. You begin to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that nothing is accidental. Everything's going to work out just as it should. You begin to really find the meaning in stuff. Why did this come into my awareness? Why did this come here? And it's not a fearful thing. A lot of people will jump onto the why am I noticing these things? And they'll get fearful about it early on. But really, you're seeing through the game, so to speak. So you got this stream of consciousness that's constantly pushing you back into the game. Divide over religion, divide over politics, divide over this, divide over that, right? So it's constantly pushing you towards separation and trying to distract you from getting out of the game. But there's a whole nother stream of thought or consciousness, and that would be the Christ consciousness. So to really take note of these streams of consciousness coming through, paying attention, does this seem like it's from the Matrix? Is it trying to push me back into the game and distract me? Or is this, you know, service to others? Is this from God? Is this going to help somebody? Is this the right thing to do, so to speak? So most of the time, if you can get out of the idea that your thoughts are you or yours, so to speak, then you can just observe them and determine which one you, if any, I mean, you don't even have to choose. You can just observe the thoughts as they pass by. But if it's something you want to act on, you can determine what's the source of this thought or this idea. And more than likely, you'll feel it in your heart if it's something you're supposed to do. So just trust your heart. But I really wanted to put this out about trust because this trust has really pushed me into a whole new level of growth and excitement. And one of the byproducts of that is the fear has just dissolved away. I have no fear whatsoever. And it's really been amazing. I'd say one of the things that when I came across the Mandela Effect and I was just sort of getting out of my dark night of the soul, that I feel helped me with the fear, because I did get to that point where I was like, you know what, I wouldn't mind if I was dead at this point. I wasn't suicidal or anything, but I sure didn't mind the thought of death, and I think that sort of helped me over that. But this whole idea of trust has really helped solidify that feeling of no fear at all. There's nothing to fear whatsoever. You can rise above any of those lower levels where the fear resides and tap into that higher level where there is no fear. Everyone's playing their roles, and you're sort of taking that perspective where you're just watching it. You're not in it, you're just watching it. In the world, but not of it. So I'll leave you with that. Consider it, think about it, play with it a little bit, and see if you can prove it wrong. And chime in the comments below and tell me what your experiences have been with trust and growth in this area, or if you have any ideas or tips or anything you'd like to add to what I said. Awesome. Please do so below, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. If you'd like to support the work I do, go to paypal.me/UOTF. Thanks.